Aquí tenemos al secretario de Estado Marco Rubio, o Little Marco como ustedes le quieran llamar, compareciendo ante el Congreso de los Estados Unidos. Y bueno, como es típico en esta clase de audiencias, cada senador tuvo la oportunidad de hacerle fuertes preguntas a Rubio. Y aquí les tengo a uno de mis favoritos, el senador por New Jersey, Cory Booker, quien claramente le aclaró a Rubio nuestra triste realidad.
The Strait of Hormuz, I was listening to the conversations you had with some of my colleagues. We've now seen the strait close for months, and you explained that we're going to see an opening of the strait, and ultimately the exchange we will get for that is after that fact, we will release certain sanctions. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said. What I said was that if they open the straits, we will lift our blockade. The straits and the blockade are what are interrelated.
And so for the nuclear program, in exchange for getting rid of the fissile material out of country, I imagine, is what the highly enriched uranium, we would release sanctions. Is that correct?
Well, it's not just that. It's also their enrichment activity. They would have to, they would have to make very severe and significant concessions on what they intend to enrich in the future.
And already with the March relaxing of sanctions, allowing Iranians to sell oil to the Chinese, estimates have been between $10 and $50 billion they got from that relaxing of sanctions. How much money might we see in a deal in our relaxings of sanctions in order to get rid of the highly enriched uranium and stop their enrichment?
Well, let me just tell you on that portion, the sanctions that were released on Iran were boats on the water. And so that oil was already out in the marketplace. It was sold at market rates, but the sanctions covered, and to the extent we've been able to enforce them, we have the revenues of those sales. So yeah, the Iranian oil was unsanctioned so that it could be sold, but the revenue would have to flow back to blocked accounts, which our sanctions were able to go after. We've also seized, I believe, 6 vessels in the Indo-Pacific that involved Iranian sanctioned oil on top of it. So that wasn't necessarily a trade. They didn't get $50 billion directly as a result of. They might have gotten some of it. They certainly didn't get the majority of it. They are now losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day in revenue because of the blockade. And the blockade exists because of what they're doing in the straits.
Right, and I guess the conclusion I have, and my time's expired, is that the Strait of Hormuz was open before this unjustified war. We're now scrambling to try to find a way to get it back opened again. Not only is it causing economic havoc to our country and to residents all around this nation, families trying to make ends meet, but you see on top of that, the Iranians finding ways to leverage that, as we allowed them to do with the Chinese for tens of billions of dollars. And so my point is, before we even get to a nuclear negotiation, this regime is getting money to rebuild, purchase more drones, cause more havoc. And this is before we're even trying to get back to a
But I apologize, I don't understand how they're getting this. What revenue are you referring to?
Well, there's 2 sources of revenue we're seeing. One is the revenue from the Chinese, that's factually documented. And number 2, the revenue that you're proposing that they should receive by releasing all of their highly enriched uranium, as well as in making a commitment about their enrichment capacities.
Yeah.
Hold on. And that was the exact deal that you guys vilified, that the president and you vilified President Obama from having.
¿Recuerdan cómo criticaron y atacaron a Obama por hacer un trato con Irán acerca de las armas nucleares y el enriquecimiento de uranio? Un trato que les costó muchísimo tiempo de llevar a cabo. Diplomáticos de muchos países, incluyendo por supuesto Estados Unidos, movieron cielo, mar y tierra para que esto se llevara a cabo. La diplomacia es algo que a estos tontos definitivamente no se les da. Se les hizo muy fácil y pensaron que con 2 cachetadas iban a quebrar a Irán.
Yeah, no,
So
I
here
don't
we
those are
have a
not the
worse situation where
Those are not the same
our
deals.
adversary and our enemy, who's causing havoc in the region, who is funding proxies and terrorists, has discovered, thanks to you all, the power of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz.
No, they didn't
which
discover.
is
They
all-
knew that a long time ago, and they've done
well,
it before.
clearly, we all knew that a long time ago. That's why this
And they intended to do this at
ill-conceived
some point
war
in the
should have
future
never
as well.
happened.
Yeah,
You
but
have made our adversary in a stronger negotiating position. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and we're in a stalemate with Iran. And now we're begging to get back into a deal that you all
We're not
trashed
begging.
in the first place.
There's no one begging. I don't know.
Clearly, this is a
Senator
shame.
Booker, your time's up.
But can
Senator
I just-
Rubio, since he's
I do
gone
want to
over,
address
you
some
can
of these points
respond.
because they go to the heart of the matter. No one's begging for anything here. The Iranians might be begging because their economy's losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day. That they are losing. Understand, Iran had street protests going on before all of this started. All of those factors, economic factors in Iran, are far worse today than they were 6 months ago when those protests were happening. They have hyperinflation, their currency's completely devalued, they're struggling to make payroll for their government workers. Iran is in a very serious situation, and if it was up to the political class there, and I understand everybody there is sort of radical in some way, but if it was up to the people that actually like go to elections and wear the suits and you see on TV, they'd probably make a deal tomorrow. It's the issue they're facing is that the supreme leader and the IRGC Corps are a little bit more immune from those pressures until they can be convinced otherwise. And I think that's the direction that they're moving in, because the reality, I don't know where you're getting this perception that Iran is stronger. Iran has no navy left. They've lost a substantial percentage of their defense industrial base. That Iran has lost a substantial percentage of their missile launchers. And their economy is far worse today, and I mean far worse today, than it was 6 to 9 months ago. And they are looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of reconstruction costs just to get to where they were 6 months
Mr. Rubio, you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
Well, the war's over
completely
now.
annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump and with their costs, and yet this thing still hasn't been resolved. Every day he tweets out, oh, we've obliterated them, we've annihilated them, they're going to surrender. But yet we still find ourselves spending billions of dollars a week
Senator
on
Booker,
a war abroad.
you've gone way over. And
It would be nice if we had hearings where people
Thank
had to
you,
be held
Senator
accountable.
Booker. Senator Scott.
All right.
Condition number one is they have to reopen the straits. And reopening the straits means the following. Ships can sail through international waters the way they can do through other choke points around the world without being fired upon, without paying a toll. That's condition number one. In addition to the straits, that's the predicate that opens the door to phase two. Phase two is they have to commit to very specific negotiations on highly enriched, the disposition of the highly enriched uranium that still is buried deep in a mountain somewhere. They have to agree on negotiating severe and long-term limitations and or cancellation of enrichment activity in their country.
In the second phase of negotiations.
Ahora resulta que para Trump y para Rubio, la prioridad número uno es abrir el estrecho de Hormuz. Y las armas nucleares y el enriquecimiento de uranio ya pasó a segundo término. ¿No era esa la razón principal por qué atacaron a Irán? Ya están como el ratón. Ya no quieren queso sino salir de la ratonera. Se metieron en una broncota que ya no saben cómo salirse de ella. Y las mentiras o el estar negando que estamos en guerra solo les sirve para ganar un poco de tiempo cada día. Su argumento es, estamos acabando con ellos. Su economía está por los suelos en este momento. Sí, tienen razón. Y la de nosotros también.
Well, obviously, these are highly technical matters, so I don't think you could work those out in 5 days. That would require a team of experts to meet over a 30, 60, 90-day period and work out the details. But they have to commit to their willingness to do that. For example, they have to commit to say, we will dispose of the enriched uranium. And the question now is, what are the mechanisms by which we do so? That can be negotiated.
Final question. In order to get to that second phase, are you willing to release sanctions or release frozen money that the United States is withholding from Iran?
Right now, everything that's been discussed with them is that any sanctions relief. Now, remember, sanctions come, there's international sanctions, there's congressional sanctions, there's executive sanctions. So some we can release and some we cannot. But any sanctions relief is condition-based, which means it has to be in return for the reason why those sanctions were put in place in the first place, which is their nuclear program. So yeah, look, Iran is being sanctioned because they enrich uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because they've highly enriched uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because of their nuclear activities. If they agree to give up those things, there will be sanctions relief associated with their commitment and compliance
You will not give
with those
them
agreements.
sanctions relief just in exchange for reopening the strait.
No, that's not been discussed. That's not been offered.
Marco Rubio, who is trying to keep his job, but also may think he would make a good president. How thin is that tightrope?
Yeah, I don't understand Marco.
Because you served at the same time he was in the
No,
Senate.
we served together, and he knows that they are playing hide the ball here. He knows that this is a confusing mess. And, he's trying to, thread a needle. And, he's good at threading a needle. But at the end of the day, if I would have been tempted, if I was on that panel, I would have been tempted to ask, what happened to you?
Would you have really done that?
Yeah. What happened to you? And I would have had the report he co-signed about Russian interference in the 2016 election that he was the co-author of along with Mark Warner in the Intelligence Committee. And I would have said, you signed this. Are you saying that you lied when you signed this? Are you saying this report? And because I think that would have set the table for a guy who has lost his bearings and what he believes in. I don't think he's done. I think there'll be other moments that he'll struggle with more than maybe he's struggled so far in this hearing. But it's very hard to keep up with what Marco Rubio believes in. And I think that's a very difficult place from which to run for president.